Hey everyone, happy 2022. We're almost 4 weeks into it. And this is gonna be a great year for us as content creators and storytellers. And 2021 wasn't that bad. I hope not for you either. I was able to make my next feature film. I did a bunch of content for almost $1 billion worth of real estate, a bunch of commercials. I survived COVID pneumonia, which was a huge plus. And I wanna post a ton of helpful content this year, starting with, for me, the most important part or element of content creation and filmmaking, and that is storytelling. Because if you don't have a good story, well, you can still make movies, but why not make ones with amazing stories if you can? Now, my first rule on giving or taking advice is the most useful advice is from persons who have actually done successfully what they are telling you to do. And writing is one of these areas which just has way too many experts by people who have never been successful. Now look, this doesn't mean that their information isn't useful. Often it can really help, but I take it with a grain of salt and see what's useful and what isn't. All right, here's my top 10 books on storytelling. 1, Stephen King's On Writing. Arguably the #1 best-selling author of all time in the last 60 to 70 years. And this is obviously not about screenwriting or filmmaking in particular, but it is about storytelling. And he offers invaluable advice, not only on how to write, but how to live as a writer, how to write professionally and get in the right mindset. A lot of it is kind of autobiographical, but that also helps inform his approach. And for me, this is the #1 book I recommend just on writing in general. 2, Shrunken, Elements of Style. This is a brutal book because it's so succinct and to the point. And if I had to summarize the book in one sentence, it would be say more with less. And it's actually one of the toughest things you can learn about writing and storytelling is how to tell a more effective story with fewer words. So again, this is not on screenwriting, but it is an excellent short, small book on writing in general and will inform your screenwriting. 3, William Goldman, Adventures in the Screen Trade. And 4, his follow-up, Which Lie Did I Tell? Or More Adventures in the Screen Trade. William Goldman is one of the most successful screenwriters of all time. He's won Oscars, but he's just told so many incredible stories. And a lot of this book, or a lot of both of these books, is more about the circumstances of the films and how they actually went. He does offer some really valuable advice on screenwriting itself, but it's fascinating to kind of see what life has been like for one of the greatest screenwriters of cinema history, what you can expect going into the screen trade, as he calls it. So definitely 2 amazing books worth picking up and worth reading. They're a great time, and you walk away with some good advice on how to put together stories and scripts. 5, Robert McKee, Story, and of course the accompanying Poetics by Aristotle. And look, he is not a successful screenwriter, but he has helped a lot of successful screenplays come into existence. And more than anything, like when I read his advice and I listen to his advice because I've attended his seminar, it makes sense to me. I go, that makes sense, I can use it. Maybe he hasn't written $1 billion blockbuster, but I really like his approach. So I think he has something valuable, definitely worth reading. And it's one of the, like if you've been to college and you've studied screenplays and they didn't make you read this book, you got gypped. And it's definitely one of the seminal books on screenplays and screenwriting that exists. 6, Blake Snyder's Save the Cat. There is probably no other book on screenwriting and screenplays that I hate more than this book. Now let me explain that, because he's a successful screenwriter and really, he offers a lot of great advice in this book, really good. But man, since he released this book, it's painful because you can see the movies where the system that he gave in this book was just like a checklist. Like, oh, we did this part, we did this part, we did this part, we did this part. This book, I believe more than any other, has created what I consider the formulaic approach to screenwriting in Hollywood. And as an overall comment on that, you have to realize that Hollywood is very business driven, and it's called the film business for a reason. And all of the major studios are corporations, which means they have shareholders. And instead of the golden days where you had kind of a studio runner who was like, I really believe in this, and boom, 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 wild, wild west, now you have risk analysis. And a big part of determining whether or not a story is gonna work, because who knows? Like, if everybody knew which story was gonna be great, there would be nothing but great, successful stories, and that is not the case. So as part of risk analysis, you can almost see the films where the studio executive or the studio approval committee, who is not made up of artists and writers, but of corporate people who answer to shareholders, went, does it have the save the cat moment? Is the whiff of death in there? And if I have to watch another animated movie with my kids where I literally can check off every box of Save the Cat, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But that's beside the point. It's a great book. It's a phenomenal book. There's some fantastic advice in there. I would just say, don't treat it as dogma, which it seems like so many studio films do these days. Number 7, Art Linson's What Just Happened and his sequel book, or whichever one came first, number 8, as A Pound of Flesh. So Art Linson is not a screenwriter. He's a producer, and he's done some pretty incredible films. Some films that I've really loved. The Untouchables, which is a classic. Fight Club, which is another incredible film. And it's really interesting to see the producer side of the picture, how they view screenwriting, how they view stories that they want to take. Because at the end of the day, if you're gonna write something, you want a producer that's gonna produce it. So these 2 books really help you give sort of like an inside view, not just into the screenwriting process from the producer side of view, but life as a filmmaker in the Hollywood trenches, which, having lived there the vast majority of my life, I can tell you is super accurate. And it gives you an insider's view that you can use to sort of appreciate and also look at the ridiculousness of it. Number 9, Sid Field, The Foundations of Screenwriting, arguably one of the granddaddies of how you should be doing screenwriting and screenplays. Definitely worth a read, and you can see the influence that that book has had in larger productions over the past, 20, 30 years. You can definitely see how it's influenced writing in Hollywood since its release. Number 10, Joseph Campbell's A Hero with 1,000 Faces. And this is just, it's not focused on screenwriting or screenplays or films, but actual characters. And it's a fascinating analysis of archetypes and kind of, if you want to write really good, very interesting characters with strong archetypes, I definitely recommend this book. Pretty much any professional writer who considers themselves a professional writer has read this book. In addition to that, I would just say read your favorite screenplays of all time, watch the movies that accompany them, and write screenplays until your fingers fall off. There are, of course, dozens of other books and courses on writing and screenwriting and storytelling, but the ones I gave you really stood out to me in all the dozens of books and courses that I have read or taken on the subject. And look, just because you read these books doesn't mean you're gonna tell a $1 billion blockbuster story or write a screenplay like that. But I think they can really help you organize your thoughts and give you some training wheels while you write, and get your own experience. And as a word of advice, don't be afraid of writing bad stories. I say embrace them and write something that you know is truly terrible, so you can recognize the cliches and the poor elements in your own writing, and then when you strive to write something great, it will help you avoid them. All right? Let me know in your comments any other books on writing that helped you, and also if you have a moment, tell me what things you'd like to hear about. Again, have an awesome 2022. I hope it started great for you. Let's kick some ass this year.